The plates are already washed and left to dry by the sink, and the sound of running water has long faded into the background. The living room feels a little larger now, as if the space has stretched quietly without anyone noticing. You sit down on the couch, not out of intention, but because there's nowhere else you need to be. The light overhead is still on, but it feels softer than it did earlier, as if even the room understands that the day has ended. Somewhere in the house, a door closes gently. Then nothing follows. The television isn't on. Your phone rests nearby, face down, silent. For a moment, it feels like everything has paused. Not in a dramatic way, just enough for you to notice the stillness. The kind of stillness that only appears when the day has finished asking things from you. And in that quiet, something unfamiliar starts to surface. It's not a clear thought, not something you can name right away. Just a faint awareness that this moment, sitting here after everything is done, feels different than it used to. Not heavier, not lighter, just different. There was a time when evenings felt full, even when nothing was happening. Conversations would carry on a little longer, or there would be something small to look forward to. Even silence felt shared, like it belonged to more than just you. Now, the quiet feels more personal, not uncomfortable, not exactly peaceful either, just something that settles around you, like a presence you've slowly gotten used to without ever really acknowledging it. You lean back slightly, letting your shoulders rest for the first time today without tension. The day didn't feel particularly difficult. Nothing unusual happened, no major problems, no big decisions, just the usual rhythm of things moving forward. But sitting here now, you notice a kind of tiredness that isn't physical. It's the kind that only shows up when everything else stops. And for a moment, you don't try to explain it. You just sit with it, quietly, the same way the room sits around you. The days don't really stand out anymore. They begin in familiar ways, with routines that don't require much thinking. The same movements, repeated often enough that they feel automatic. Getting ready in the morning, stepping into the outside world, carrying the small expectations that come with being part of it. None of it feels particularly difficult, but none of it feels entirely new either. It's a kind of rhythm that keeps everything moving without asking too many questions. Throughout the day, there are moments that almost feel meaningful. A brief conversation, a task completed, a small sense of progress. But they pass quickly, and before long, they blend into the rest of the day without leaving much behind. And then, almost without noticing, you find yourself back at home again. Dinner happens the way it always does. Not rushed, not slow, just another part of the evening that fits into place. There might be conversation, or maybe just the sound of utensils against plates. Nothing unusual. Nothing that asks you to stop and reflect. It's only afterward, when everything quiets down, that something shifts. Because during the day, there's always something to respond to. Something that requires your attention, even in small ways. But here, in this part of the evening, there's nothing left asking anything from you. And that absence feels different than it used to. There was a time when having nothing to do felt like a kind of relief. A break from everything else, a moment to rest without thinking too much about it. But now, the quiet doesn't always feel like a break. Sometimes it feels like a space that opens up wider than expected, not empty, just unoccupied. And in that space, thoughts begin to move more freely, not in a rushed or overwhelming way, just slowly, one after another, without direction, small observations about the day, fragments of memory, things that didn't seem important earlier but somehow return now that there's room for them. You don't chase them, you don't try to organize them. They come and go on their own, like background noise that becomes more noticeable when everything else fades. And through it all, you remain sitting there in the same place, as if this has become part of the routine too. Not just finishing the day, but quietly noticing what remains when it's over. It's subtle at first, the way this part of the evening begins to feel different. Nothing about the room has changed. The same furniture, the same lighting, the same familiar arrangement of things that have been there for a long time. But something in the experience of sitting there has shifted, almost without you realizing when it started. The quiet used to feel shared, even when you were alone. Now it feels more like something you step into, not intentionally, not with any clear reason. It just happens, the way certain habits form over time without being noticed. Sitting down after dinner, letting the evening settle, allowing the day to fade without marking any clear boundary between what just happened and what comes next. And in that space, there's a growing awareness of how much of life happens without being spoken. The small efforts, the routines that keep everything in place, the quiet ways you move through each day without needing recognition or acknowledgement. None of it feels significant on its own, but together it forms something steady. Something that continues, even when no one is paying attention. You begin to realize that this quiet isn't just the absence of noise, it's the presence of everything that didn't get expressed. Not in a dramatic way, just in small, almost invisible ways. The thoughts you didn't say out loud, the feelings that didn't need to be explained, the moments that passed without leaving a clear impression, but still remained somewhere in the background. And sitting here, you notice them more. Not because you're looking for them, but because there's nothing else covering them up. It's a strange kind of clarity. Not sharp, not overwhelming, just a gentle awareness that becomes more visible when everything else slows down. And for a moment, you wonder when this became familiar. When did evenings start feeling like this? When did the quiet begin to carry more than just rest? There's no clear answer. Just the sense that it didn't happen all at once. It arrived gradually, the way most things do. The longer you sit there, the more the quiet begins to feel like something you recognize, even if you've never really thought about it directly. It's not loneliness, not in the way people usually describe it, because there's no immediate sense of missing something, no clear absence that demands attention. Everything that needs to be done has been done. The day has moved forward the way it was supposed to, and yet there's still something left behind. Not a problem, not a question, just a presence. It sits quietly with you, the same way you sit in the room, without needing to be acknowledged. And over time, you start to understand that this feeling isn't new. It's just something you didn't notice before. Maybe because earlier in life, there was always something filling this space. Conversations that extended into the evening, plans that carried into the night, a sense that time was still unfolding into something else. But now, time feels more contained. The day begins, it moves forward, and then it settles. And when it settles, it leaves behind this quiet space where everything becomes more visible. Not in a dramatic way, just enough to notice. you start to see how much of life is made up of these moments that don't ask for attention. The parts that don't get remembered clearly, but still shape the way everything feels. The evenings that pass without anything remarkable happening. The silence that isn't uncomfortable, but isn't entirely peaceful either. The way you sit there, not waiting for anything, but not entirely at rest. And slowly you begin to understand that this is part of it. Not a phase, not something temporary. Just a part of how things are now. There's a kind of weight to it, but it's not heavy in the way people usually describe weight. It doesn't press down on you. It doesn't make things harder to carry. It just exists. A steady presence that becomes more noticeable when everything else fades. And maybe that's what adulthood feels like sometimes. Not a series of big moments or clear turning points, but a collection of quiet evenings like this, where nothing is wrong, but everything feels slightly different than it used to. Where the day ends, and instead of moving on to something else, you simply remain where you are, noticing the space that's left behind. And in that space, there's no urgency, no need to fix anything, no expectation that something should change. Just the quiet recognition that this moment, as simple as it is, carries more than it seems. After a while, you shift slightly on the couch, not because you need to, but because staying in the same position starts to feel noticeable. The room is still the same. The quiet hasn't changed, and neither has the feeling that came with it. But it doesn't feel unfamiliar anymore. It just feels like something that belongs here, the same way the furniture does, the same way the evening settles into place each day without needing to be announced. You glance briefly at your phone, but there's nothing urgent there, no reason to pick it up, no message waiting that needs your attention right now. So you leave it where it is, and for a moment, you simply sit there again without trying to turn this into anything more than it is. Just another evening, just another quiet moment after everything has been done. Nothing to solve, nothing to figure out, only the quiet presence of a day that has ended, and the small, almost unnoticeable way it lingers a little longer before disappearing completely.